Welcome to a Wednesday edition of the First Things First podcast. I'm your host, Jenna Wolf. Catch us Monday through Friday, 6:30 a.m. Eastern on FS1. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts. Tell us what you think and leave us a review. Time now to bring in Nick and the Hall of Famer Chris Carter. It's the last day of summer, and we begin with the NBA because Kevin Durant apologized for the uproar he caused on social media this week. Durant was caught tweeting in the third person saying, quote, he didn't like the Thunder organization or playing for head coach Billy Donovan. He discussed his use of social media yesterday.
I don't regret clapping back at anybody or talking to my fans on Twitter. I do regret using my former coach's name and that former organization that I played for. That was childish. That was idiotic. All those type of words, I regret doing that, and I apologize to him for doing that. But I don't think I'll ever stop engaging with my fans. I think they, really enjoy it, and I think it's a good way to connect us all. But I'll scale back a little bit right now and just focus on playing basketball.
So Durant went on to tell USA Today, quote, no, there's no different account. I was just on there talking. It kind of looked like that way. It did kind of look that way. I haven't slept in 2 days, 2 nights. I haven't eaten as well. Wait, what's... I was going to ask for your reaction, but maybe I don't have to. You're eating this up.
All right, Kevin Durant needed... I don't know who was in Durant's life growing up. I had a great man named Anthony Mange, my best Italian godfather, teach me at a very early age. There are sometimes three
How many Italian godfathers?
I have a bunch of them.
Okay.
He taught me at a very early age, sometimes there's only 3 words you need to know. Deny, deny, deny. You can never cop to this, KD. You had to go to your grave claiming you were hacked, you fired a social media manager, you can go the Ted Cruz route and say there was a young intern who had the account. I don't care. You can't admit to it. You certainly can't admit to it and then not fully admit to it.
Everything.
So, I sent the tweets, but I didn't think it was a different account. I just decided to go third person and talk about the Thunder as they and KD as he. And, okay, that doesn't make any sense. But most importantly, this is a real, in seriousness, window into KD's psychology on this. He is still struggling with his decision. He was not in that.
Yes, that's obvious.
Cece, he says in the longer version of that audio, I don't regret clapping back at people. He was not clapping back at people. If these tweets were bleep you, KD's a champion, he's got $300 million bucks.
Right.
That's one thing. But they were not. He was relitigating his decision. He was engaging in the debate about whether or not he should have gone to Golden State. And that shows me, in his own head, even as an NBA champion and as a finals MVP, he is still conflicted about what he did.
Nick, I've said this before when you and I are working together. KD is what I believe to be a mama's boy, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I think he has a very good relationship with his mother. It's endearing. They're very, very close, even at this stage of his life. And also, given some of the other things that I've seen, and most of the time when you're a mama's boy, you love to be liked, or you're always looking for approval. And I know LeBron, he's lived a different type of life because he's been under the microscope since he was 14, on the cover of many magazines at the age of 16, 17.
16, yep.
So how he's come up in the public light. And LeBron, he's a mama's boy. Well, that's all he had in his life. Mom's built a little bit different, but his dealing with rising to stardom has just been totally different. And you say, well, why would you bring LeBron into this? Because LeBron is the best player in the world. And we look at this information and we forget this is the second best player in the world. I mean, he's got a couple $100 million
at least.
I mean, and he's talking about, well, I still want to engage with my fans. He's not engaging with his fans. He's engaging with the people who aren't his fans. So I mean, what we've seen in the last couple days from the NBA with Kyrie, with KD, to me, I beg the question, man, college is really important. Or just growing up around normal people, like it's really,
man, this is why,
really
thank
important.
God, and thank God LeBron exists, because you football guys, if this was the best basketball player in the world, would be able to call the entire sport a bunch of emo millennials.
Right.
Thank goodness LeBron is the standard bearer, because if he's not there and the best player in the league is doing this,
yes,
setting up fake social medias to argue.
If this is Tom Brady,
I can't.
If this is J.J. Watt,
can't deal.
I mean, both of them get so much criticism as it is for being great.
Wouldn't it be nice if he could just go on as Kevin Durant and respond in full honesty the way he wanted to respond, whatever he wanted to say, however he wanted to say it, and people wouldn't criticize him? I think that he would get the same backlash.
But he
now,
does that, Jenna. Jenna, he does that.
But he doesn't get to say, apparently he doesn't get to say exactly what he wants. He needs to create fake Twitter accounts for whatever reason to be able to say exactly what he wants to say.
Okay, wait 1 second. For the people in the public eye, tell me who is saying exactly what they want to say.
Because you can't.
No.
Because you feel like you cannot do that. I'm sure there are things you would love to be able to say that you just can't say.
Right.
And it's a different bevy of a list of things than Kevin Durant can't
And his
fully
level,
say.
My level of fame is nothing compared to his.
This isn't about money, and it's not about who raised him or where he came from. He wants to be able to fight back, to justify leaving Oklahoma City, and this was the only way he thought he could do it.
But he told us the justification would be the championship. The justification would be the winning.
Well, Kyrie also told you a lot of things that
But
weren't
we
exactly
now, at
true.
least with KD, the results are in.
Yes.
You won the championship. You hit the 3 over LeBron. And I'm sure after he hit that 3 over LeBron, he started a group chat with himself talking about how awesome it was. But the other things from these tweets, one of the tweets he sends, his roster wasn't that good. It was just him and Russ. That is, to quote your favorite show, that's kind of yada-yadaing the sex. Just him and Russ. It was just me and the 4th best basketball player alive. Can you imagine if Karl Malone was like, listen, I don't know what you want me to do in Utah. It's just me and John Stockton.
That's the point.
But I disagree with you on that point because, to me, see, I don't mind the truth part because I'm not in love with Billy Donovan as a head coach.
He took a shot at Billy Donovan as well.
Okay, no problem. Because I believe that there's some truth there. And he's not going to win a championship with him and Russ. And that's all that franchise does have is him and Russ.
See, they were up 3-1.
But they didn't win.
And still, it's his opinion, and he wanted to be able to say it.
Okay.
How else do you say it? Chris agrees with him.
No. I don't agree with how he went about it. But I'm just saying that's why I believe that he's a lot like Kyrie being disingenuous. He said some things in there that would validate that it was him. The coach and Russ, those are legitimate. But be a man. Stop making all these other excuses.
But you just said nobody does that. You just said no one says exactly how they feel. So how can you say be a man?
Okay, listen. In this situation, I'm a free agent. I decide that I'm going to leave OKC. I talk to Russ, and when people ask me, I tell them I made the best basketball decision because I believe the owner, Jerry West at the time, the front office, Steve Kerr, they're better for me going forward. That's saying the same thing. This is a better roster than where I was.
But
didn't he say that?
Of course. Okay. This is just a more blunt way to do it. But there are so many. I wish we could get from the grave guest expert Freud on the show. What about the fact that he acknowledges in these tweets that he hoped people wouldn't know was him, that he didn't think he could beat this team. And then he has Nike release sneakers that say, can't beat them, join them. As if that's an unfair arrow being slung at him. Those things written on the sneakers, were those things people were slinging at him on the internet? Or were those things coming from his own head? Wait, have I changed? Because that's on there. Was this kind of the scared move? This is a guy who If we had told him, hey, here's how the season, if you go to Golden State, you guys win the title, you are one of the front runners for MVP of the league until you get hurt. You then win. You then win Finals MVP. Will that make you happy? I think his answer would have been absolutely. And now he's sitting there this summer. And this summer, what's he done? He goes on a podcast and takes shots at Steph Curry's shoes. That's
we are going to discuss this further.
I think the NBA should change their name, not NBAP. National Basketball Association of Pettiness.
Oh, God. We all held our breath there.
Now joined by Fox NFL analyst and three-time Super Bowl champion and big fan of Moana, Mark Schlereth.
Yes,
hey, Mark, how you doing?
I am
All
doing
around
well.
smart guy.
I'm doing well, and you're welcome.
Okay, it is now Nick Wright's favorite part of the show, Power Rankings time. Yeah. All right, we're going to run through the first few here. Sports Illustrated has the Kansas City Chiefs at number 1, the Falcons at 2, Patriots all the way down at number 3, probably because it's the lowest they've been since birth, Steelers and Raiders rounding out the top 5. So, Mark, I'm going to start with you here. Have the Patriots looked like a top 3 team to you? Were you a little surprised by where they got placed on this list?
I'm not surprised. Do they have Belichick?
Yeah, they do.
Do they have Brady?
Yeah, they do.
I am not surprised at all, and they're not a finished product by any stretch of the imagination. And I think you could look at their defense. I think their back end is pretty good. Mm-hmm. They've had some busts in coverage. I think their front seven. When you look at front sevens around the National Football League, I think that they're probably pretty marginal compared to most.
Yeah,
but here's
middle
the
of the
thing.
pack.
Right. Here's the thing about the New England Patriots. Having played against them a bunch, there's certain teams, and we were talking about intelligence in the break. There are certain teams that test your intelligence as an offense. And I've always looked at them not from a personnel standpoint of being able to really test you, but from a mental standpoint. And what they do to you as a defense is they put you in situations where you're confused. And they have the versatility in their front seven where guys have the duality to play both a D end and a linebacker. And so they'll put out groupings, and then they'll just stand around. And you have to break a huddle and decide, is this a 4-down front? Is this a 3-down front? Are they in nickel? Are they in base? What are they in? And these are like this is upper level football talk, but it makes it incredibly hard because to block people, especially in pass protection, to block anybody, you have to understand the differences. And so when you have a guy out there, a Nikovic back in the day, right?
Yes.
That can play defensive end or can play outside linebacker, you have to designate that guy. And if half of your team has designated him as a defensive end and half are designating him as a outside linebacker, there's going to be a break in your protection. And they're going to get a sack without physically beating anybody. That's what they do to you on a consistent basis. So they always have had players in their front seven that have the duality to play multiple positions, and it makes it very difficult to designate who's playing what. Therefore, protection breakdowns, that's how they get pressures. That's how they get sacks. That's how they beat you. And this is still, in my mind, the smartest team in football, week in, week out.
The Pats are a top 3 team, especially after week number 2, because they got clobbered in week number 1. But that very seldom happens. They have a couple injuries you have to be concerned about. He talked about their defense. We know that they'll be a lot better in November and December. But with Brady and Belichick, they're going to be in the top 5. This offseason that they had, we thought it was going to be a lot better. But seeing Tom Brady healthy, Gronk being semi-healthy, I mean, they're going to be one of the top 3 teams. And the battle with New England is how many games are they going to win? And are they going to have home field advantage? Because they can be anywhere in the top 5. If they get home field advantage, they're number 1 or number 2, depending on the NFC.
And think about this a couple of years ago. Remember when Kansas City went out there a couple of years ago and just absolutely just...
It was in Kansas City.
It was in Kansas City, right.
Yes.
They beat them down. And remember, Brady was done, and, the New England Patriots break up the Patriots. They're no good anymore. And then they just turned around. Remember, Bill Belichick was on to Cincinnati. And then they ran roughshod through the rest of the league and won a Super Bowl. I mean, this is what they are. This is who they are.
That is definitely who they were.
And were. You went past tense on me, Nick.
Right there.
2 weeks.
That That right there is the basis of the entire sporting public, it would seem, at least slightly, if not greatly, overvaluing the Pats right now. It is based on who their coach and quarterback have been. It is based on something they did 4 seasons ago, I guess, actually. You cannot say based on how they've played this season. They're one of the 3 best teams in the sport. They played one other.
Where should they be on the list then?
I did mine. I didn't even know SI was doing there, so I just did mine on Twitter last night.
He does
my
his
top 10
every day.
No, I do
every
it
day.
No,
3 times a day, Nick.
No,
you're always calling me. Oh, I just got a new list. I put it together. Do you want to hear
I do a lot of lists, but I also do. I'm organized with this.
Nerdo.
Tuesday night NFL Power Rankings at Get Nick Right if you would like to see them. I had the Pats 9. I think that's fair based on how they've played. They played a good team in Kansas City, a Kansas City team we might be slightly overrating as well because we think the Pats are awesome, but a good team, my hometown Chiefs, and the Chiefs went to New England and beat them soundly. They then played a team that I think most people believe to be one of the worst teams in the NFL, and they went to their place and beat them soundly.
One of the worst defenses.
Yes. Well,
and they're a lot better team playing at home.
I think maybe the worst defense.
So make sure you give all the characteristics of who New Orleans.
Okay, well, I think they are one of the worst teams because they have the league's single worst defense. I don't think they have one of the worst defenses. And if we were looking at this team without the proper nouns, just the details on them. Okay, so this offseason, what happened to him? Well, their most reliable receiver went down with an ACL injury. Okay, coming into the year, they were really going to rely on this major free agent acquisition. He has 4 catches for less than 100 yards through 2 games, despite playing 1 game against a terrible defense. Okay, their other big weapon on offense. Well, he's been injury-prone the last few years. He went out in week 2 with an injury. We'll see what happens. All right, what about on defense? Well, the top player they picked in the draft, he's on the IR, a player they traded a draft pick for. They already cut him. They play the same area because they're trying to upgrade their pass rush. Another pass rusher, Shea McClellan, he's on the IR. We would be saying, oh, okay, even though greatest quarterback ever in the argument, if not the number one, greatest coach ever in the argument, if not the number one, they have some bigger issues. The Patriots are being given, they deserve the benefit of the doubt. I don't know that they deserve this expansive benefit of the doubt they're being given.
I would look at them like this, and I think this is like the easiest thing in the world to do as a fan of anything. I don't follow basketball, but I can watch a basketball game and know that Russell Westbrook is the best athlete on the planet. I can just, it doesn't take any sports acumen for me to understand that. I can see that. And I think it's easy to look at talent. It's easy to print up a roster and go, wow, their front 7 is pretty marginalized.
Yeah.
You know, they've got some issues with their receivers. I know that winning football games is more about your understanding of how to exploit another team's weaknesses and your understanding of football in general, having enough football acumen to be able to do those things. So it's so much more than talent to me. That's what this game is.
We believe in the systems more than we believe in talent. Because all 32 teams have talent.
Yeah, you got to have great talent, but you've got to be able to put that talent in positions to win. And that's what they do better than anybody else. So I am going to continue to give the Patriots, and I understand your arguments, and they're good arguments, but I'm going to continue to give them the benefit of the doubt because I know how smart they are as a football team.
I mean, they are a proven commodity. For me, intellectually, I've been battling Bill Belichick since 1987. That's when he was the defensive coordinator with Bill Parcells of the New York Football Giants. Played him twice a year, all right, for 3 years before I went to Minnesota. So I followed his career. I've played against his defenses a bunch of times. And forget about the list for 2 games. There's respect for what these guys have done in this league. Now, you had a bevy of things that you're poking holes in. Now, those 8 teams you have in front of them, give me the laundry list of them. Like, what makes these teams so perfect?
No, nobody's saying...
Because it's a lot of bad football out there right now.
Correct.
And you got 8 teams that you have seen with your eye that you think that they're going to be able to beat Belichick and Brady? Like, that's an interesting take.
Okay, but so if it is not the argument that there is a perfect team or a flawless team. But the argument is this. If you are a team that, when we're doing these lists, when we're doing these rankings, you've lost. as opposed to a team that has not lost.
Yes.
If you're a 2-0, take the Carolina Panthers, for instance, right? They obviously have issues protecting Cam.
Right.
Cam has had issues coming back from the injury. I thought Game 2 was better than Game 1, but he hasn't looked great. However, they're yet to lose. You tell me every day on this show that pro football, it is week to week. Can you get the win? So if you guys are giving the Patriots a benefit of the doubt based on history, that I am giving the other 2-0 teams in the league. I have them 9th. 7 teams are undefeated. 7 teams right now are 2-0.
Real quick question. Do you have Pittsburgh listed ahead of the New England Patriots?
I have Pittsburgh number 1.
Okay, so let me ask you this. If Pittsburgh were to play on a neutral site, the New England Patriots, based on history and based on the fact that the Pittsburgh Steelers have not been able to stop that offense, they have not been able to contain Tom Brady in that offense, would you pick Pittsburgh or would you pick New England?
Based on history? No. Based on this year?
But Nick,
yes.
You can't.
I can't take the history out.
I understand your argument about based on history. I understand game to game. I understand let's just focus on Sunday. But if there's one thing that every single guest, every single person that has sat in that chair has said, the one consistent thing,
they don't like
it's that do not
Sorry, go ahead.
Is do not bet against the Patriots until they give you reason to.
They gave us reason.
No, they didn't.
Nick,
they came back.
Give me your top 3 teams.
They came.
Give me your top 3
Pittsburgh?
teams. No,
Pittsburgh 1.
Okay. History.
Kansas City 2.
Okay, wait a second. You and the Kansas City fans, how excited are you for your team to go 14-2 and you can't wait to get the bye and that first wait a second.
About this.
Wait a second.
You're right about
What
this.
about that first divisional playoff game with Andy Reid and all the lack the lack of success?
You're
right about that.
Okay, what's team number 3?
Oakland.
Okay.
What about that defense?
That was my big concern with Oakland coming into this year. I've been very impressed with how they played through 2 weeks.
You said you were concerned about Marshawn Lynch, too, as we get later in the year now. Him wearing out, right?
Absolutely right.
Okay.
Absolutely right, which is why there's a difference between, by the way, power rankings and prognostications, and you bringing up my hometown Chiefs' litany of playoff failures is dirty pool, and I don't appreciate it.
Yeah, I told you. That's
trying to give me
way,
post-traumatic stress at 7:11 a.m.
Dallas Cowboys coming in 9th on that list. Seems like everybody has been piling on to Ezekiel Elliott, except my kid, by the way, all week for Zeke's lack of effort after an interception against Denver. Didn't help that Zeke had just 8 yards in the game. Some good news for Elliott. Owner Jerry Jones is coming to his defense, saying Zeke isn't the only player to blame.
Well, I think if you look at everybody's reaction to that interception, you could have, if you really looked at several Dallas Cowboy players on that interception, you saw what would not, I think, be the case in a closely contested ball game. I think you can point to Zeke, but you really have to look at the general effort to chase that ball down by most of the people that were on the field. Dak now, of course, gave it everything he had to try to contain that interception, but still, you look at it across the board, you'll need more effort than what you see.
Mark, we've all been piling on to Zeke this
Sure,
week.
you should.
Is it?
You should pile.
Dog pile.
Right.
Oh, there you go. I was just going to ask you if it's too much. Is it overblown?
Yeah.
Okay, there you go.
Listen, what is his biggest issue, right? I mean, legitimately, on the field, off the field, emotional maturity. Right? He has made mistakes from an emotional and a maturity standpoint. And I understand, I've had, believe it or not, I've had my butt handed to me many, many times on a football field. Mm-hmm. The thing is you look at the film on Monday, man, and there is no worse feeling in the world when you look at your film and you haven't sold out for your teammates. You don't sell out for your teammates. That effort by the Dallas Cowboys is why they can't win a playoff game. That effort by the Dallas Cowboys is why they won't win a playoff game. If you're not sold out for the people that you play with, great leadership comes when you care more about the people you lead than you care about yourself. And that, to me, is selfish football that will never lead to championship football.
Does it matter what kind of player or who you are? Because CeCe was saying all week that, like, Randy Moss took plays off. You've seen guys take play off, and sometimes you say something and sometimes you don't.
In context for which I said it, Randy Moss also ran 50 yards down the field more than anyone in football.
No. That's why I said
there was an understanding that for him to do his job, Yes. Now, Randy didn't verbalize it the right way, the way you like football players to do it. Have I seen other players, interior linemen, take plays off? I'm not trying to make an excuse for Zeke. I'm saying this happens all the time, but it will be addressed. Like, this is the core of a football player and the team. I will play as hard as I can and as long as I can. I'll give you guys an example. Larry Allen, one of the great guards that ever played this game. He got, use your word, mollywopped by Reggie White. Reggie White abused him. He was embarrassed. He could barely sleep. Went to the weight room the next day and began the bench press. And in his mind, he said, that will never happen to me again. His own personal pride led him from that butt whooping he took from Reggie White, led him all the way to the halls of George Halas Hall to Canton. Now, there's players that will respond in different ways under adversity. Zeke did not respond the way we would want him to respond as a football player, and his biggest problem is he's not self-aware. And that's what's got him in problems off the field, and now that's what's getting him criticized, and everyone's dogpiling on him now because of that play.
Well, and this is, and you speak to what is my only real concern with this. Because listen, we talked about it Monday. I said it's a bad look. I did not think it would be a 3-day story. I didn't think people were going to be this worked up about it. I do not think it's a federal case. I think it happens. It happens. Zeke's a very prominent player. The cameras happen to catch the perfect angle of it. Sure. It's the Cowboys, so we discuss it. My one lingering concern is the game in which it happened. We have only seen Ezekiel Elliott have one bad football game as a pro. And we have only seen him do this once as a pro. If this was a game the Cowboys are losing, but he has 125 yards and he does this, then I just think, okay, listen, the guy spaced for a moment, took a play off. My only lingering concern is because he's going to face more adversity. Like, this was his first NFL adversity on the field, but every player in league history, no matter how great, has a bunch of bad games, has a bunch of adversity. The concern is does he disengage if he is not succeeding on an individual level? That's the thing that I'm curious to see moving forward.
I think here's something very interesting. And the Broncos defense will do this to you. Remember the Super Bowl with Cam Newton? I mean, they went, they struggled the next year. Remember when Aaron Rodgers went in there in 2015 and for about 6 weeks after, he didn't look like Aaron Rodgers? Yes. They'll do that to you. This defense will do that to you. This is the first time I've ever seen Dak Prescott look like a young quarterback. It's the first time. The first time I have ever seen him look like a young quarterback was Sunday. And that's the type of effort, your all-star running back, where you really want a guy to come out there. Listen, I understand 9 carries, 8 yards. It's a frustrating day. It's a frustrating day.
We've all had them, though.
Right. But, like, your team and your young quarterback is struggling, man. We need to all be kind of in this thing together. And it's just a bad look, and it's not a championship level effort.
You mentioned you've all had them. I wonder if the first is always the hardest. Because I can't think of, what's the last time Ezekiel Elliott struggled on the field? Not once in his rookie year.
Right.
Maybe never at Ohio State. Yeah. Probably kicked people's butt in high school.
He struggled at Ohio State, the Michigan State game, when he didn't give the ball, and he had the press conference afterwards and told the people he was healthy and should have been running.
But he wasn't ineffective. He just wasn't given the opportunities.
He also broke his wrist early in his career, which didn't allow him to play.
Right.
But the one thing that we're looking for, Nick, from our teammates, we're not worrying about having bad plays. We're worrying about what they're going to do when they have bad plays, because we all get bust straight in the nose. It happens week in, week out to the greatest players. But what you care about as a teammate, man, can I depend on you? Mm-hmm. Come hell or high water, can I depend? You got my back? Yeah. We used to have a roll call around the locker room. It wasn't to find out what the guys' names were. It was to find out who was here to play football. And when they had roll call in Denver, Zeke didn't show up. Everyone else checked in for the game. But Zeke did not check in. And that's one of the fundamentals that we do in football, all right? We're going to check in together, and you know what? We're going to all check out together.
Right.
And that's when the game is done. And that's just something that he's going to have to overcome within his locker room, because his teammates, Zeke hasn't let them down. I know he's getting a lot of heat from fans and everything. His teammates have video of him playing with tremendous effort, and they know this play is an outlier. So I don't see it as a problem moving forward, especially if he doesn't show that behavior.
You hope that it's a learning experience, and I understand the frustration, and we've all been there from the frustration. But with that, even when you're struggling, like you're struggling, things aren't going your way. We've all been there. At least you, as my opponent, you're going to walk away with a bloody nose. I may have got my butt whipped for 64 plays, but you're walking away with a bloody nose.
You will be sore tomorrow.
It's going to be a street fight. And that's the thing that bothers you.
Dude, man.
No, I'm not. I'm the nicest guy in the
Wait,
world.
guys, did we hear from Zeke? Did Zeke ever talk about this? Have we
Not
heard?
yet.
He has not said anything about it.
Because after the game, I don't think he was asked about it, and he hasn't been available since.
The Giants haven't been able to get anything going on offense. 13 points in 2 games, not so great. And this isn't anything great either. They were 26th in scoring last season. Head coach Ben McAdoo addressed his concerns yesterday.
We got to learn to get out of our own way. We had some failures last night, and failures aren't fatal, but failure to learn from it might be. So, we're not going to panic. We're not the first good team to start 0-2. We can't keep doing the same thing over and over again. That's insanity. It's not working. So we're going to look to make some changes this week, like we did last week, maybe a little more drastic.
Coach Eric Mangini still with us. Coach, does McAdoo need to give up play calling to right the wrongs on this team? Is he just a little overwhelmed by his to-do list when the game starts?
It is very hard to call plays and then be the head coach. It's hard because you've got to think through what's happening in the next series. Your defense is on the sideline at that point. You're not involved with the things that they're doing, the adjustments they're making, things that come up on special teams. You're present, but you're also talking to the offensive coaches to figure out things that went well the last series, things that didn't go well. I think wearing both of those hats is extremely difficult, and you need to be the head coach of the whole team. Now, some people have done it really successfully. I do think there is significant value to overseeing it and then trumping calls that you don't like or guiding it, but flexible enough so that you can deal with everything else that's going on in the game.
Yes, and sometimes as a head coach, but we've had this debate for years. Guys who are proven coordinators, and once they become the head coach, been able to manage all those responsibilities that go on in a chaotic sideline. Not smooth. I'm talking about chaos is on the NFL sideline. So that's a normal criticism. But is there someone better equipped to call plays on the staff? So before we say, Ben McAdoo, he shouldn't be calling plays, there's not a proven play caller on their staff that I'm going to take this hard responsibility that I believe only a few people are good at and hand it to someone just because the optics outside, the fans are saying that I don't believe he can handle the responsibility.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think you do something for the optics. If that's why you're doing it, and you're worried about what the fans say and you're worried about what the pressure is externally, you're probably in the wrong business. And if you're willing to change because of those things, that to me is a mistake. If you're willing to change because you feel like it's going to make you more effective as a head coach, it's going to make your team more effective, then to me that's a really smart decision. Now, maybe there isn't anybody better to call those plays, but he can still guide it all during the week. You can set up the call sheet. During the game, you can be on the line. You can evaluate how the guy does. But you've got to have a relationship with the other two phases, and you've got to be involved with those parts.
Here's what I know. If he's going to continue calling plays, he's going to have to show that it's not overwhelming him from his most primary responsibilities as the head coach. Chris, who is the only person other than players that can call a timeout for the team?
Head coach.
Head coach. And we saw when this game is still in the balance into the first half against the Lions. The Lions get stopped on a 3rd and 10. It is 4th and 3 on the 38-yard line with 1:15 left. It's a 7-point game. New York has all 3 timeouts. Inexplicably and indefensibly, Ben McAdoo doesn't recognize time, score, situation, doesn't call timeout, and deprives his team of a chance. That kick hit the crossbar. It's a 56-yarder. That is a less than 50% chance you're going to make that kick. You had the opportunity to have the ball at the 40, around the 40, with 1:10 left, 2 timeouts to go score yourself. If he had to do that, he was asked about it yesterday. He said, I was worried that they were going to go for it on fourth. That's not a good justification.
Well, actually, I was just thinking about it. When you make that decision to take a time out there and they go on the sideline and they figure out, oh, this is a really good fourth down play that we like, one of those got-to-have-it plays we talked about yesterday, you've got that situation as opposed to them coming out and having to kick the field goal. And look, let me just say something about time management. It is really, really nice to be able to talk about time management here. But when you're in the moment, you have people in the box who are trying to help you out. You've gone through different scenarios, but it's not perfect.
Well, so this is my question, and I brought this up to Chris before the show, and he almost, for the first time in our relationship, he almost struck me. So I'm now going to bring it up to you, since you're between us.
I wouldn't say that's the first time.
We see,
Coach.
We see,
Come on, man.
In other sports, teams go outside of the sport to add intelligence. We saw the movie Moneyball and the book Billy Bean's. We saw how did they pick players? They had a kid from Yale who knew very little about baseball build an algorithm. We've seen the Philadelphia 76ers. How are we going to rebuild the team? We are going to essentially go into the finance MIT world to figure out the best process. Daryl Morey, similar, an MIT guy running the Rockets. Why is football? What would be wrong with this? Hey, the head coach does have too much on his plate. It is difficult. If people on their couches are yelling, you got to use a timeout, and the football coach, who knows more than us, isn't recognizing it, why can you not assign a guy whose only job is know when to use your timeouts? Understand before the 2-minute warning, after the 2-minute warning. Understand the math of we got to take it right now if we're going to do this, and have that be his only job. You can be a $50,000 a year weekend job for a smart guy. What's wrong with that?
I had the former head of replay officials who had retired the year before helping me out in Cleveland with challenges, and it wasn't 100%. And that's no knock on him. This is the guy who made every single decision.
Welcome to a Tuesday edition of the First Things First podcast. I'm your host, Jenna Wolf. Catch us Monday through Friday, 6:30 a.m. Eastern on FS1. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts. Tell us what you think and leave us a review. Time now to bring in Nick and the Hall of Famer Chris Carter. Football on a Monday night. Giants hosting the Lions. All eyes on Odell Beckham Jr. making his long-awaited return, and it didn't quite go as planned as the Giants lost 24-10. OBJ only caught 4 passes for 36 yards as the Giants couldn't get anything going offensively. Odell and Eli Manning met the media after the game.
I just wanted to come out, see what I could do. You know, we limited it, and it felt good to be able to play again. It's been a long time, so just kind of getting your feet wet.
I got to find ways to play better, get more completions, convert on third down. That's a quarterback's job. He's got to find ways to move the offense and move the ball and score touchdowns. So we're not doing that enough.
So, Nick, the Giants had a lot of problems last night, and some of them were more glaring than others. But are there offensive problems beyond Odell Beckham's repair?
No. The Giants can still.
Wait a sec. Now, you asked him the first question of the day.
Whoa.
The Giants' problems.
Yes.
Are they beyond Odell's repair?
Yes.
Okay, now go ahead.
What?
Because I didn't think you were off to the right track on this.
What do you mean? What?
Did he have the answer wrong?
Unless he's baby Jesus. Because they have a lot of problems.
Are you baby Jesus?
But go ahead. I'm going to allow you to go ahead and start it
They
off.
had a lot of problems, but you also had reasons last night for some optimism that they can fix them enough to let the defense be the defense. So, no, I don't think the Giants' season is lost. I don't think their offense is beyond repair. And I think we saw last night, even with just 4 catches for 36 yards, what Odell changes for them offensively. You saw, as opposed to week 1, when there were no dynamic playmakers on the field, you saw, because even with a hampered Odell, the attention that had to be paid to him, what it allowed the tight ends for the Giants to do. Eli, in a mediocre, if not below average game, was 7 of 10 for 108 yards and a touchdown when targeting his tight ends. Why? Safeties couldn't worry about the tight end position because safeties were worried about Odell, even a gimpy Odell. You also saw that this game was going true to form for how the Giants won 11 games last year. Keep it close, have your defense choke them out late, and make one or two big plays. The problem was the big play was the punt return for Detroit that blew the game open, and Odell wasn't there to make his big play. He was there but was not able, because what we saw yesterday with the ankle was that Odell could still run his slant route, but that slant route that he was a threat to take to the house every game last year, he wasn't that threat yesterday. He caught the first 4 balls thrown to him, the final pass thrown to him of the game. He dropped. It would have been short of the first down anyway. So, listen, 0-2 is a bad place to be. 0-2 is a really bad place to be when your next 2 games are road games against Philly and Tampa. They have to get a lot of things fixed, most notably the offensive line. But you saw enough yesterday that was a difference from how that offense looked in week 1 to how it functioned in week 2, to where I think once Odell is fully healthy, you could see this team score 17 to 20 points, which is typically all they'll need to win.
Right. First things first. Odell played yesterday just on guts. He's about 75%. A number of players that I know, wide receivers, they wouldn't have been out there. And one was because he's limited on how far he could go down the field. The quick breaking routes, the in breaking routes, he was comfortable doing that. But you didn't see him stretch the field. Now, Nick has numbers that would say Odell catches a lot of short passes and make it on. But from a game plan standpoint, because you talked about him even being a decoy, opening up for the tight ends, yes, on the short stuff. But imagine even if he could take the top off the defense, right. If he could have ran deep post or takeoff routes down the sideline, it even opens up more space. He's a great football player. But as wide receivers, we're limited to the impact we can have on the game based upon the offensive line. And this is no indictment on college football, but people wonder, because you're hearing more and more conversations earlier in the season, why is their offense struggling? And the consistent theme is if you don't have a quarterback, it's your offensive line. And NFL general managers and head coaches have disregarded the offensive line. Now, the offensive linemen that we're getting out of college football, because college football is so much spread offense and it's not power football, just knock a guy back. So the training for young offensive linemen coming into the league is not up to par on the other skilled positions on the offensive side.
But, CeCe, that's where, if you're watching the game yesterday, that's where, and we'll talk about Ben McAdoo later, everyone recognized that Eric Flowers could not handle Ziggy Ansah and that he needed help. How do you not send a tight end to the left side when Ziggy Ansah is ruining your entire game?
This is the dilemma. That's why I don't think Odell can fix their problem. Odell being on the field, it opened up. You said Eli was 7 of 10 throwing to the tight ends.
Yep.
But you know how you help out a tackle? By leaving the tight end in. So now you have less receivers into the route. So now you have more defenders to defend Odell, Brandon Marshall, Sterling Shepard. So there's a huge numbers difference. So you're saying, okay, help the tackle. Yes, Flowers is not a left tackle. They drafted him in the first round. Their right tackle is a kid I love. I've been coaching him since he was 15, Bobby Hart. He got hurt, had a bad ankle. The right tackle, he's not a right tackle. Played college at Florida State. He's an interior guy. He's a guard. He's not a tackle. So Flowers and Hart, they can't be replaced. And you can't put tight ends, running backs blocking, helping them out, because it makes it easier for the defense. So, yes, it was nice to see Odell out there. He's not 100%. But to me, that offensive line and Eli Manning at this stage of his career, those should be the conversations. Like, if you want some remedies, that's where you look. Look to number 10, all right, and look to the front office and the head coach to be able to fix that offensive line.
I was going to ask that. I mean, a lot of what we saw last night, I would say you guys especially, I saw it as someone just watching the game, that Eric Flowers, that the offensive line obviously didn't give Eli the best chance to hit who he wanted to hit, to stay up. The guy was sacked 5 times. But also look to Eli Manning, who had there were a couple of times last night where you questioned what he was doing, time management, things like that. How much of what we saw last night was, I know what you're going to say, Eli being 36 and just not as quick with everything, or the fact that he just wasn't given the best opportunity to play.
All quarterbacks, regardless of Eli's age, all quarterbacks, when they're hit early in the game, it affects them, regardless of how much experience they had. Now, Eli, that's what we saw last night. In the first quarter, I mean, he got hit immediately. So he knows the tone of the game. He knows I'm not going to have time. I'm going to be rushed. And as you could see, it affected his decision-making. Also, his ability just to do the basic things we ask quarterbacks to do. Listen to the play in your headset. It's in your helmet. All right? Get the formation, dictate it to the offense, and get in and out of the huddle.
Did you not see him do that?
No, it was very slow. For Eli, he's been in this offense long enough. Him and the head coach have had a great rapport. They should be able to call plays in situations like that weren't really stressful situations.
CeCe, that you're assuming something there that I don't know if it's fair, which is that he's getting the play in time. You're assuming that Ben McAdoo on his giant menu of plays is quickly getting the play in.
Right. Well, when the coach says after the game.
Well, and that's okay. I know we're going to get into that. I don't know how fair that was of McAdoo. But on Eli, I am an Eli critic. I've been an Eli critic. I'm a guy that does not think I'm a guy that does think, despite his 2 Super Bowls, that he is not a Hall of Fame caliber player. However, yesterday, the problem was not Eli Manning. Eli made one dreadful throw. He had Brandon Marshall wide open going across the middle. It would have been a first down. It might have been Evan Ingram. It was on the interception. I apologize. I can't remember who he was throwing it to. But it was wide open going across the middle. He let him way too much. It ended up being an interception. That can't happen. You can't miss that throw. But aside from that throw, I thought Eli showed guts. I thought he made some big throws when he knew he was going to get crushed. And his numbers speak to the fact that he actually played, given how much pressure he was under, pretty well. The Giants' defense held Matt Stafford, the league's highest paid player, to 122 yards passing, the second lowest of his career. You saw the elements to the Giants being who they were last year, a team with an excellent defense that makes just enough plays offensively. Odell was not 100%. When I tweeted before the game, I think the Giants win. I think Odell is a huge game. That obviously did not come to fruition. But you saw there are going to be people this morning that will use my favorite stat. You start 0-2, you miss the playoffs 88% of the time, and say the Giants' season is over. I do not believe the Giants' season is over, and there's no team in that division right now that looks amazing. Dallas showed flaws. Right. Philly's shown flaws. Washington showed flaws.
But the Giants will have to find a way to score more than 20 points a game at some point, with or without Odell in the lineup, if they want to be competitive. Tough moment for the Giants in the 24-10 loss against the Lions. At the end of the third quarter, Eli Manning and Ben McAdoo had a miscue on a 4th and goal at the 2 that led to a delay of game. After the game, Coach Ben McAdoo discussed this play.
Sloppy quarterback play. Quarterback and the center need to be on the same page there. We got to get the ball snapped. We have a veteran quarterback who's played a lot of football. I expect us to get the ball snapped.
Former head coach Eric Mangini joins us, and when he was discussing this earlier, he called what Ben McAdoo said a compliment sandwich, which was...
No, what Jason Garrett did.
Oh, you thought Jason Garrett was a compliment sandwich. But you didn't have too big of an issue of Ben McAdoo calling out Eli Manning. I thought it was unnecessary for him to call out his quarterback, but you agree with me wholeheartedly?
Well, here's what I'd say about the timeout. I understand the timeout part of the equation, because when you have a veteran quarterback, usually you're going to allow him to make that decision. If it's a younger quarterback and you're not sure whether or not he can make that decision, you'd intervene. But with a guy like Eli, you're going to let him decide whether or not he has enough time to get the ball off. The sloppy quarterback play, that was a little bit more aggressive than Jason Garrett was. Do I have a problem with that? No, I don't really have a problem with it.
So it was sloppy quarterback play?
Well, in that situation, yeah, it was probably sloppy quarterback play.
Go ahead, CeCe.
No, it was a combination of sloppy quarterback play, and he talked about the center. And the reason why in the video you could see that the linebackers had gotten up into the A gap. So he was trying to change the protection. And in trying to change the protection, it got within 5 seconds. So typically with the offensive line, you can't change the protection within 5 seconds, okay, because you have to change it. They have to get reset. And typically when you audible, the snap count is not on 1 because the team will start to recognize it and jump your snap count. So when you audible, most teams that it's on the second hut. So the process takes time. If Ben McAdoo, if he knew that, if he had the insight in knowing that this protection was fine and the center and the quarterback messed it up, he's given us insight that they could have run the play. And you have to, he knows more about their offense and what they're doing, regardless if we have a problem with what he said. To me, you have to coach up players. Now, if you guys don't like, do they call them out in the media and everything? Well, that is our business. It's the National Football League. Coaches do it different ways. Ben McAdoo was not wrong in what he said because it was a communication error between the center and the quarterback, and they were concerned about the blitz look that they were getting.
And it's also one of those things where you're assuming that if Eli's going up and he's going to change the protection and he's going to make those adjustments, he understands the process and how long it takes. And if at the end of the day he doesn't feel like he can get the play off, he's going to stop and take the timeout. He's trusting him to do that, and that didn't happen, and I think that's where the sloppy quarterback play comes in on the comment.
What's frustrating for me in this instance is we have seen repeatedly with this coach, Ben McAdoo, that these plays get in a few seconds later than we're seeing across the league. It's one of the reasons why from last year to this year, he pared down that giant, like ridiculously sized play sheet that he had because it was taking too long to get the play in. You tell me if this is unfair. In a situation like this, where you have 3rd and goal from the 10 they had it, if you know the pass play, you're not running where all the routes are going to the end zone. You know there's possibility that the ball is going to end up not a touchdown, not an incompletion, just short of the end zone, as it did. You need to know when you're calling that 3rd down play, if we get it to 4th and within what are we going for it? Are we kicking a field goal no matter what? Are we going for it on 4th if we're within 3 yards, 2 yards, 1 yard? That way, as soon as the play's over, you can send in what you're doing. You need to know on 4th down or on 3rd down what you're going to do on 4th down. The Giants didn't know that. So part of the reason that Eli was up against it, and I'm no big Eli Manning defender, but part of the reason they were up against it was because the Giants didn't know what they were doing beforehand. It took them too long to get the play in. That is on the head coach. I don't mind if Chris calls me out in a meeting after the show in front of the staff for something I screwed up. But if I screwed it up and Chris had part to do with me screwing it up, and then he's throwing me under the bus to everyone, that's going to aggravate me. That's the part of this that I think is unfair to Eli.
Well, I'm not sure how late the play came in, but this is one of the difficulties of being the offensive coordinator and the head coach. Or it could be one of the best things.
Yes.
Is he had to make a decision on 3rd down as to what he wanted to do. And then as a head coach, he had decided to go for it. And then as a coordinator, he had to pick his plays. What I always believed in is that to have a core group of plays each week, there were got-to-have-it plays. You knew what you were going to run in that critical situation. You were going to practice that. And when it came down to it, the players knew exactly what you were going to run. So everybody was on the same page and moving forward quickly in the most critical moments.
Coach, can I ask all of you guys a question? You probably know this better than I do. If what you described isn't on that Olive Garden menu, what is? I thought what's on there is, hey, if we're 3rd and goal and it's this much time left, we're doing this. So to make it actually easier when you go into a game, what else is on there besides all those plays in various situations so there is less thinking time?
This is what really happens, all right, in real time. All right, on 3rd down, they've probably decided that they're going to go for it on 4th. But they don't know the measurement. And inside the 5-yard line is the hardest place to throw the football. Well, why? Spacing. All right? There's only 10 yards in the end zone. You only got 5 yards, or the 4-yard line. You only got 4 or 5 yards there. So you only have 15 yards. If they only rush 4, then they got 7 guys to defend this small space. So the number of plays that you can run, there's only a few of them. But if it's 4th and 6, the call is different than if it's 4th and 4. What type of defense did they have in? Did they go to a goal line? Now, I'm also talking to the headset to the people upstairs who can see the substitution. So all this is happening in real time. 3rd down happens. Now we have 4th and goal. Okay, we're going to go for it. On the call sheet, there are 5 calls, either 2-point plays, 4th down and short, that are on the call sheet. Myself, Brian Billick taught me this. Chris, remember them. And I used to memorize them because I had a couple quarterbacks, when the call came in, they were nervous and stuttering. And I'd be scat right, H dodge, on 2. So I've seen that happen to younger quarterbacks before.
We weren't even going to take that chance in saying, hey, Chris, remember, we were going to define them during the week and practice them and made sure everybody knew if we get into this critical situation, this is what we are calling. This is our gotta have it play. And it used to frustrate me early on in my head coaching career. We'd practice the gotta have it plays. We'd get in the game. It'd be a critical situation. The offensive coordinator called something different.
Yes.
And I said, what are you doing? Why do you think we practice this?
Now, also, one of the problems with the Giants, and I'll let you go, is
doing?
I never know what he's doing back there.
One of the biggest problems is when you don't have success, like the Giants have not had. Like Ben McAdoo has been a successful offensive coordinator. He can formulate first personnel groupings and attack defenses a certain way. He's been successful. But now you're at a critical juncture. He don't have a whole bunch. You know why? He can't protect. He can't run the ball. So I don't care how big the sheet is. None of them plays are good if guys don't make plays. So he's got a problem. And that's how you can run out of time in real time in the red zone.
And what you're discussing quickly is that's the benefit to being the offensive coordinator and the head coach that you didn't have. Like, you don't have to worry about some guy in a booth not going with your gotta-have-it play. The downside is you got a lot going on. And Ben McAdoo at the end of the first half yesterday totally butchered an obvious timeout situation, likely because too much, like, it's a lot of responsibilities. These are big, full-time, highly paid jobs separately. When you combine them, it's a really rough spot.
And you're adding to the fact that you've got a veteran quarterback and you want to put a lot of faith and trust in him as well. So there's a ton of moving parts going on in a critical situation, and you want to take as much thinking out of that as you can.
So Ezekiel Elliott has taken a ton of heat for his lack of effort in the Cowboys' blowout loss against Denver. And if getting crushed by the media and the fans wasn't bad enough, now head coach Jason Garrett is piling on.
Well, one of the things is the foundation of our football team is fight. We're going to compete and fight, scratch and claw. That's what we're going to be. And that's one of the reasons we love Zeke Elliott. That's what he is. Watch him play. He competes. He battles. And again, those plays were uncharacteristic of him. So we'll certainly address it with him. But we have to address that with our entire team. That's not the way we play.
Coach Eric Mangini is back with us. Coach, does Ezekiel Elliott deserve all the blame for that play that he took off?
That's pretty tepid criticism, isn't it? That's hardly calling anybody
that's
out.
Wrenching right there.
It was like what I'm saying.
No, it was like a compliment sandwich. It was.
Wait, Coach, what was it?
It was a compliment sandwich.
Hashtag compliment sandwich. I love it.
Where you tell him how, look, he's such a great competitor. He's so good. That's why we love him. He could have really done a better job with that, but. We're also going to talk to the whole team. It's like nice, little tiny bit of, we didn't like that, and then nice again.
That's the J-Lo, the interview. Compliment, question.
Definitely, yeah.
Anyway, you all look super great today, and you're very handsome, and we're back after this. I get the compliment question.
That's we were talking about McAdoo earlier about doing it to the media. In this instance, when it is the topic of the day, fair or not, like that was one of the big things. We talked about it. They were talking about in Dallas. I actually think Jason Garrett did Zeke a service there, not a disservice, because of the way he handled it. Because he went out of his way to do what you're saying, which is, listen, we saw it, not okay, but it's not who he is. My concern with it yesterday, and my concern still remains today, and I just want to know where you're at on it, is as a coach, would it worry you more that this is something we've never seen from this guy, and it happened while he was having a game we've never seen from him? Would it worry you that, okay, we've always gotten this super high level at all times Ezekiel Elliott, but we've also always had productive Ezekiel Elliott? And in games where he's not as productive, which we hadn't seen, where he's not getting the ball as much, which we hadn't seen, are we going to get a different guy? That was my only real level of concern about this yesterday.
Well, yeah, I definitely have that concern. And going into the second year, it's Dak and it's Zeke, and it's all young players. You don't really know who they are. You're still learning about these guys. Mm-hmm. And we haven't seen a situation where Zeke's been unproductive, where the Cowboys have had that kind of game. How are they going to deal with adversity? And in terms of calling out players, ideally, you do everything in the meeting room. That's what you want. But in a situation like
Say
this,
that a little slower. Can you
wait. Look, ideally, you do everything in the meeting room, and you want to keep things in house. But in a situation like this, where it's you can't move away from the question. You've got to address the question. It's a young player. I know he's an emerging star. It's important for him to understand this is not okay. And it's important to send the message collectively, this is not okay. Now, you can address it in a lot harsher terms in the meeting, but that is not okay. And everybody's got to know it.
Coach, for one, I mean, we have spent most of our adult lives in these locker rooms and in these meeting rooms. And the versions that we have seen from Jason Garrett and Ben McAdoo, these are tame versions of the conversations that really happen between the coaches and the players.
Tell us. Give me some insight what it's really like.
Yeah, and you're being nice with the word tame.
No, I'd love
it's
to know.
Harsher. It's even a harsher word than that.
I remember one time in Philadelphia earlier in my career, the late Dale Hopp, great defensive line coach for Buddy Ryan, helped invent the 46 defense. There became a discussion about a player's grade after the game. And then the discussion got more heated. Reggie White, Seth Joyner, Clyde Simmons, Jerome Brown, and the next thing I know, the divider falls down. And we got 6 guys fighting the day after we won. The day after we won.
What do you mean fighting? Like fighting?
Fighting with the coach because of what the coach had said to him. So, I mean, my mom has not talked to me as bad as NFL coaches have. My college coaches, the way they charge me. My high school coach, almost every coach at every level has been in your face, and I'm going to tell you exactly what you need to hear, not when you want to hear it. Now, there's a business called the NFL, so the coaches, they clean it up a little bit. But in private, I mean, you free game. Any player that I've ever played with, they've been free game. So to see coaches being criticized because, you know something, they could have said something a little bit easier, man, their livelihoods are at stake. There's only 16 games. Every game is either pass or fail. There ain't no incomplete. And you only have so many games. So now we're just going to criticize coaches based on every little word. Oh, he went at him too soft. Oh, he went at him too hard. All right? This game is supposed to be taught a certain way.
If it was, then the coach would get out there and say, you know what? Eric Flowers didn't do his job. That was terrible. You know what else? Hey, Brandon Marshall should have caught that. That was terrible. And you know what? Maybe we shouldn't have brought him over here. Like, it would just be vomitosis of
They didn't ask him that question. They asked him about the sequence when they were in the red zone, and he answered it. When you have a veteran center, and especially the experience we have at quarterback, the play should get run.
Well, so that's if people just joining us, that's from the Eli Manning discussion, that not the Zeke Elliott and Jason Garrett discussion.
But we're talking about how a coach responds.
I just wanted to make sure people understood the context of it. The one issue that, and tell me if I'm wrong here, that I think some coaches have is players learn early on. Are you, I guess to use a cliche, a player's coach, more of an old school hard-nosed coach, and are you the way I understand, it is very difficult for a coach to transition. To start off as your buddy coach and then all of a sudden be the harder coach, pardon me. Jason Garrett has never been considered one of the hardline guys. So does he have, in your experience, would you believe the credibility in the locker room to do what you guys are discussing, which is to really go at somebody? Or does he have to do it in a gentler way because that's the coach he's been for most of his tenure in Dallas?
Well, that was a pretty gentle way to go
I know,
at someone.
But in the locker room, I'm saying.
In the locker room, you have to be whoever you are. And do I think that it's hard to go from being everybody's friend, hanging out, and then suddenly taking a hard line? It's the same thing with parenting. You've got to set a tone. You've got to set the things that you believe in, and it's much easier to go from a hard line and soften than it is to go from a softer line and then suddenly try to get hard. Because all the players in the locker room say, well, wait a second. That personality was fine when we were winning. That personality was fine for a long time, and now suddenly it's not good enough? It's not authentic.
And you're not going to be able to understand the personality of an NFL coach by watching the press conference. And I'm going to give you the best example of it is Bill Belichick. All right? You will not meet a more funny person, a more engaging person, but he does his stick for the media, all right? But off camera, he's totally a different person, all right? Who Eric Mangini was as a coach, you don't even know it. Ask the former players, all right? Because I've talked to him, and I've worked with Coach for a while, so I know that. He's a different person than the person that speaks on television.
It's been a minute since we've talked the NBA. Kyrie Irving opened up in a way few pro athletes ever do in a revealing interview on Monday. In a sit-down with ESPN, Irving admits he didn't speak to LeBron when he asked for a trade from Cleveland, saying, quote, "Why would I have to?" Here's more now from Kyrie Irving.
I don't think that you owe anything to another person in terms of figuring out what you want to do with your life. And it's not anything personal. I'm not here to tirade anybody. I'm not here to go at any particular person or the organization because I have nothing but love for Cleveland.
So, Nick, they want me to ask you if you have a problem with these comments. And yet, I guess my question is, how big of a problem do you have with these comments?
What he said, this went on for about 18 minutes. And you cannot find a 40-second clip that doesn't have a head-scratching moment. There's the clip we played where he says, in life, you don't owe anything to anyone. That's not how life works. Like, that's just not how human societies work.
Right. So,
like, literally.
So you've gotten to this spot in your life with no assistance.
Well, that obviously not. And it's, I mean, literally since we evolved from hunter-gatherer tribes to greater societal groups, like it is an interpersonal relationship that helps you grow. So that doesn't make sense. Kyrie, the quote we didn't play, but that you read, where he was asked why he didn't tell LeBron, and his response is, why would I have to? Kyrie talks a lot in this interview about being a grown-up, evolving into the man he wants to be. And you know how much I like Kyrie Irving. I have a 19-year-old son. One of the biggest indicators of transitioning from childhood or youth to grown-up adulthood is when you realize life is not about what you have to do as often as it is about what you should do. No, Kyrie Irving does not have to say anything to LeBron James. And if I decided tomorrow to quit this television show to go become a professional poker player, I wouldn't have to tell either one of you guys. But it would be the wrong thing to do not to. And when Kyrie in the interview says, Stephen A. asks him, you know people are going to think that this is a shot or that this shows something, that LeBron's going to take this a certain way. Kyrie says, yeah. And then he's asked, do you care? And he says, no. That is not who Kyrie has represented himself and who he has represented that relationship to be. So the entire thing was puzzling. I don't know why Kyrie did the interview because he didn't seem interested in actually answering the questions. And I have no better insight on why he wanted out of Cleveland today than I did yesterday.
Cece, my question to you, as someone who's been in the spotlight and who's been asked a million different times, a million different ways, by a million different reporters, and part of your job is either to answer questions you want to answer or not questions, and you've probably got really good, especially at the end of your career, at deflecting things you didn't want to talk about. This was a topic that, for as much as we wanted to hear what he said, I can't understand why he would do it. Why now? Why the way he did it? The fashion he did it? The lackluster effort he did it in? The lackluster energy he used to do it? Explain to me, could you try to even step into his shoes for a second to figure out why the timing was that he felt he needed to say what he needed to say when he needed to say it?
Well, first things first, he has the right to be able to decide what's the best move for his career. He might have had some type of indicator that from Cleveland, LeBron might not be there, or some other reason. The owner, other people in the organization, he might not have had the support. So he has that right. He forced a trade. He's in Boston now. Now, he says that in some other interviews and everything, he wants to play in the pick and roll. He wants to become more of a complete player. Okay, you have that right. Now, I remember when we drafted Randy Moss. Randy Moss called me on the phone draft day. Said, I've heard that you're one of the best ever, and I want you to mentor me. I want you to help me out. I said, okay, no problem. So he called your agent. I want you to buy a house or a condo in Boca Raton. You have to move here because that's where we train. And once you do that, I'll get you to the next step. The next week, his agent, they had processed it. Randy was in South Florida. He was, anything you tell me to do, I'll do it. And to me, that's a lot like Kyrie was when LeBron decided to come back. All right? Because Kyrie was not the player he is today that he was 3 years ago when LeBron came back. So LeBron helped him develop on and off the field. I know people who know Kyrie, and he has gone through stretches of his life where he's been very, very immature. And LeBron, besides his dad, has been one of the most influential people in seeing him develop on and off the court.
So how do you not tell him once you make the decision?
Sometimes, and I think Randy and I went through the same thing. Randy developed a resentment towards the questioning of, well, Coach Green and Chris Carter, they help you, they do this. Not all the questions. A lot of the questions had to do with us helping him be successful. Randy got tired of it and was like, listen, at some point I need to get credit for my own work. Now, I was getting closer to retirement, and I was getting ready to move on. And at one point, Randy felt like it was best for him to take over the team, him and Dante Culpepper. I totally understood that. I retired, got a television job, ended up playing another half a year in Miami. That's another story. But he decided at that point in his career, that's what he wanted to do. Now, Randy and I are mature enough that we're still friends to this day. But there was some tension there because he decided at that point he didn't want me to mentor him anymore. But I understood. But Randy told me, all right? And he told me what he wanted to do.
That's the part of this that, because you said in the beginning, Kyrie has the right. Of course he has the right.
Yes.
No one is denying he has the right. The question now is why he did it, why he wanted to execute that right, and why he went about it the way he did. And he also said in this interview, he had been wanting out of Cleveland well before the offseason. He said that he felt as a professional, he didn't want, and good for him, he didn't want it to distract from the season, so he kept it in. But he knew for a while he wanted out.
See, to me, he's very disingenuous throughout the interview. Now, so you're saying after they won, after he hits the shot.
That's what he's saying.
Between that date and yesterday, or the end of the finals. Let's go to the end of the finals. There was times in there that he didn't want to be in Cleveland.
But that's what makes it more disingenuous is, and this is one of the downsides, I guess, of being a pro athlete, is we have all this video of him, play the video during the Eastern Conference Finals, May of this year, when he, according to his own words, already wants out. Here's what he says about LeBron.
When you get to that level of trust, and you allow him to, or you allow someone to come into, a friendship that extends well off the court, and you understand how great this era can be if we are selfless to the point where we don't think about anything else except for the greatness of our team and what we can accomplish.
Nick, what does he get from not talking to LeBron? What does he gain from not saying anything?
You said in the beginning it was petty. Of course it's petty. It's petty, juvenile, and childish. And it also, at some point he's lying. Either yesterday, when he's saying he knew he wanted out during the season, or at that podium. That was during the Eastern Conference Finals. Oh, well, maybe it was what happened during the finals, losing 4 out of 5 to Golden State. Well, here's Kyrie, the day they lost the finals, after the last game. Here's what he says about LeBron.
You stand your ground, too, with a leader like that. You don't want to take a step back. You move to the front line with a guy like that, and you want to bring your game up to another level. And that's what I'm going to continue to do, because I know that if we continue to be with one another and keep utilizing one another, man, the sky is the limit.
there's a narrative out there that what happened was Kyrie heard LeBron wanted him traded. I've never believed that, and Kyrie dispelled it yesterday when he said he was feeling this way before the playoffs even started. We know how he says he felt during the Eastern Conference Finals and right after the finals. Like right now, if you were to tell me there's two Kyries, one with a beard and one without a beard, with two different personalities, that makes as much sense as anything I can think of.
Does he become the NBA's villain now? Or right now, in your mind, is Kevin Durant still holding that spot?
Oh, I think it's Durant. I think he becomes, but I think people are very interested in watching LeBron and the Cavs play him.
Yes, I just think people look at Kyrie just a little bit different.
And it doesn't make sense from so many perspectives. It doesn't make sense.
Kevin Durant made a splash on Twitter yesterday as it appears that he used fake accounts to get into arguments with strangers online. Nick, the story is confusing enough as it is. No one can explain it better than you, so...
Okay, so we saw late the night before last someone tweet to Kevin Durant criticizing his move to Golden State. Then Kevin Durant's Twitter account replied twice in third person, referring to Durant as he and him, defending Russ, but taking shots at his other former Thunder teammates and taking a shot at Billy Donovan. Those tweets were then erased. Then the great people of NBA Twitter discovered Kevin Durant almost assuredly has a secret Instagram account that his brother interacts with at times, and there's the tweets right there. He didn't like the organization playing for Billy Donovan. His roster wasn't that good. It was just him and Russ. That's a weird thing to say if you were actually Kevin Durant. The other tweet was, imagine taking Russ off that team, see how bad they were. KD can't win a championship with those cats. We then discovered he almost assuredly has a secret or a private Instagram that he argues with strangers about Kevin Durant on. We also know he just released some shoes that have on the insoles inscribed anonymous internet comments. So,
Nick, bottom line, can you just bottom line it?
Bottom line is Kevin Durant is creating egg avatar Twitter accounts to argue with anonymous 17-year-olds on Twitter, and I love it so much.
Why?
I'm so happy that this is...
What is he doing?
What's going on with these NBA players? Maybe it should be they didn't go to college long enough. I mean, their overall social skills. Now, Nick, I need help with social media.
Yeah?
Now, I got you helping me out. I got Angela, who runs all of our social here, helping me out. Like, this to me is just so childish. All right?
Yeah,
like,
of course it's
is it this generation, or is it something with the NBA players that are different than the other professional athletes?
Why are we going macro? Why are we going big picture, make it about a whole league or a whole generation? Let's make this about Kevin Durant. Let's just make this...
we just had a sensational interview with Kyrie Irving being disingenuous.
Listen, it is one thing to do a bad interview. It is another thing to fresh off your finals MVP, the best season of your life, theoretically, to decide I am going to go through the process of creating fake, secret Twitter accounts to argue with people on the internet. Now, listen, I'm not above arguing with some strangers online, but I will do it
as
Nick Wright.
Right.
KD seems to...
How much money do you think KD got right now?
$322 million. You asked me a question, I answered it. Was that more precise than you had expected?
No, it just seems like a man is... Well, I also see another rich guy arguing with people on Twitter, too.
Okay,
but that's
listen. Kevin Durant, I think, mistakenly thought when he went to Golden State, okay, all we got to do is win, and I got to play great, and the criticism will go away.
No, everyone will like me. That's what it seems like to me. KD wants to be liked.
But he's literally going at it in the worst possible way. First, I thought maybe he wanted to change his image up, unpolish it a little bit, a little bit more of a little Dennis Rodman-esque, a little bad boy.
A little dirty.
Then I think he literally just doesn't know what he's doing. He's going the opposite way. So now he's hiding that account. I can't tell if they want me to like him or not like him. It literally has confused me.
I don't know that he knows the best way to go about it because, now listen, I understand some people are like, listen, this was obviously his social media manager who had the access to the account, who sent the tweets. That would be 99% of NBA stars. If this story came out, I would think, okay, someone was tweeting from their account.
Right.
But here is the corroborating evidence. Piece one, Kevin Durant is known on his actual account to argue with random strangers. to argue with people defending himself. Kevin Durant is known to release signature sneakers with internet comments on them. We have overwhelming evidence that Kevin Durant has a private Instagram account with which he's used to argue with internet strangers. So my only question is this, KD, let's argue. Like, please, KD, I'd love to do it on the show, but we can definitely do it on the internet. Like, I'm Nick Wright. Like, I'm not Kevin Durant.
But that's my question.
I'm allowed to do this.
If you had to, before we move on, if you had to come up with a fake Twitter, Instagram name or whatever it is, I have to know just what it would be.
Chris Carter 80.
Okay, just making sure. That's what I thought, and I just wasn't sure if...
Yeah, he's sending out some tweets.
That's what I'd go with.
Using his money, his son, and now his Twitter
he passes
account.
me the phone before I press send.
Yeah, there you go.
Thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts. Tell us what you think and leave us a review. For Chris Carter and Nick Wright, I'm Jenna Wolfe. So long, everybody.